Welcome back. Let's talk about rule number 3. That is different terms for inputs. And this is one of the trickiest parts of an interview that a lot of people make mistakes on. But once you understand it, it becomes really easy to spot. So let's look at an example. I have the exact same function we saw in the last video. Compress boxes twice. We have the boxes array. And we just have 2 loops here. I'm using the for each syntax in JavaScript, but we're just looping twice over the same array. And as I said before, the big O of this is going to be 2n. But because we drop the constants, it becomes O of n. But the third rule states that different terms for inputs. And what that means is, well, first of all, let me ask you a question. What if here I have boxes as the first parameter, and then we have boxes 2 as the second parameter? And maybe this second for loop actually loops over the second boxes. What happens here? What is the big O? And during an interview, a lot of people trip up and say that this is, well, still O of n. It's going to be O, 2n, drop the constants, O of n. Now, is this right? No. Because the third rule states that different terms for inputs. And remember, boxes, the first one, and then the second one, are 2 different inputs. One could be 100 items long. Another one can be just 1 item. So this first for loop is going to depend on how big the first item or first input is. And then the second for loop depends on how big this one is. And n is just an arbitrary letter that we decided on. In this case, the big O of this function would be something like A for the first for loop, which is the first input, plus B. The big O of this function is actually A plus B, or n plus m, or boxes 1 plus boxes 2. So keep that in mind. Just because you see 2 for loops, one after another, doesn't mean that they're looping over the same items. Now, you might be asking yourself, Andre, what happens if these loops are nested? So far, we've only worked with loops that are one after another. What if this loop was inside of this loop? Well, let's get into the next video and talk about another common pattern we see with big O, that is nested loops.